Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/ChiroBusinessMojo. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player.
Welcome to the Chiro Business Mojo podcast, where we deconstruct the methods, marketing, and mindset of successful business people and chiropractors from around the world. And now your host, Dr. Richard Day.
Yes, it's true. I am Dr. Richard Day, and this is the Chiro Business Mojo podcast. Thanks once again for checking in with us. What I'm going to be talking about today is a book that I read a few years ago. It is called The Power of Habit. It's by an author named Charles Duhigg. He is a former New York Times reporter. And when I read it, I was fascinated by it because it had so much science that was explained and revealed in it behind why we do the things we do. And you hear about habits all the time. At least I do, good habits and bad habits and what it takes to establish them. But really it was the first time I've really been exposed to the science behind that was in this book. And of course, as, chiropractors with a science background, that's interesting to me in a geeky way. It also really helped to explain to me why some habits are so hard to break and how we get locked into patterns in life over and over. And I've touched on some of this in the past, but today I really want to delve into this book because I think it makes some very salient points. And for a couple of reasons, this is important. It really resonated with me. And that is, if you want to make a change in your practice, you're going to have to rewrite your programming and change your habits. And part of that is going to be changing yourself. And so, it has to be that, right? If you want to change your practice, you have to change how you do things. And chances are you have fallen into bad habits over time, or maybe you've always had these bad habits. And the second reason I think it's so important is because we are always trying to help our patients lead healthier lives, and they have fallen into bad habits. And so when you understand the science of how to make these changes in yourself, and you're going to really be able to come at it from an educated experience point of view to be able to relay this to your patients and help them to make those same changes in their life with the goal of health. So digging into the book, he really talks about he puts you in contact with why some people in some companies do so well and others seem to kind of do the same thing over and over despite saying they're trying to change or really trying to change. These changes don't seem to happen. He talks about the habits of people like Michael Phelps, the Olympic gold medalist, Starbucks, the CEO of Starbucks, his name's Howard Schultz, Martin Luther King Jr. He looks at corporations like Procter & Gamble, Target Superstores, or Rick Warren's Saddleback Church. He talks about NFL teams and coaches. And so he really digs deeply into the people who are applying these methods, and they are perfect examples backing up what the research says. In The Power of Habit, he makes a great argument that habits are the key to success in exercising regularly, losing weight, raising great kids, becoming more productive, and building revolutionary companies. And he goes on and talks about how it creates social movements as well. Really, there's a science to understanding how these habits work. So early on in the book, he explains that habits emerge because the brain is constantly looking for shortcuts. And here's a great example. If you have ever driven a stick shift, for example, once you learn how to do it, it's on autopilot. It frees up your brain for other thought. You're not thinking about that you have to push the clutch down or that you have to now take it from first into second gear. You just do it automatically. And this is in the back of your mind. So now you can process other information, higher levels of thought, things that are more important when that gets moved to the back. And he estimates that about 40% of what we do all day is all just habit. We're not even thinking about how to button up a shirt when we put one on in the morning. And he outlined something called the habit loop. And it's really got three parts. It is the cue, and then a routine that follows, and a reward. And the example I can think of really is a phone. When you get that ding or that vibration that you just received a text, that is the cue. The next thing that happens is the routine. You pull the phone out of your pocket, and the reward is you get to see, hey, somebody likes me. Someone communicated with me. I've got human contact here through the smartphone. Same holds true with social media. When you log on to Facebook and you see that you've got a new friend request or some new activity, the same loop transpires. And this forms a habit in our brain. We crave these things. And then our behavior becomes driven by what we crave. Because over time, these little cue and routine and reward, that creates the habit. And this same mechanism can be used for things that maybe aren't so great. So an example he talks about in the book is McDonald's. They've got some cheap food there and it makes the kids happy. So maybe once a week, you go through the drive-thru and you grab them some fries and a Happy Meal or something like that. And, that makes them happy. So you see the McDonald's, there's your queue, you drive through, that's your routine, and the reward is your kids are happy for 10 minutes or maybe longer, hopefully, with their reward, and you get a reward as well. But the problem is if that works so well once a week, why not do it a couple of times a week, and then suddenly you find yourself in a bad habit and you've got problems that are leading to bad health. So a key takeaway is that motivation is the craving brain. Your brain is craving that reward. And so once that happens, you are seeking that reward constantly. Now, the good news is that if you get into success habits, that's a reward. You get the recognition or whatever it is, the financial boost or whatever it is that is the reward you get, and you start craving that success. So the thing is that if you can really start making these changes in your life and having these rewards, experiencing them, you're going to start to crave them more and more, and this whole thing sort of snowballs. And he discusses some studies where it shows that the endorphins are released. I mean, this is a big deal when this happens, this cycle happens. It really is a physiological response that we have as human beings. It's not imaginary or good feelings. It's a real thing. So let me give you another example from the book. He talks about brushing your teeth. Now, early in the turn of the century, well, not this century, but the 20th century, so the early 1900s, people weren't brushing their teeth. Something like less than 20% of the population actually brushed their teeth. And so the toothpaste manufacturers got a hold of someone named Claude Hopkins. And what he was a marketer. And he looked at it and he said, well, I think we need to establish something that is a reward for brushing your teeth. And so there's a little bit of acid, and I can't remember the exact kind, that got put into toothpaste that gives it that tingle. It's still used in toothpaste today. And the advertising became centered around, rub your tongue over your teeth and do you feel any gook? I'm doing it right now. You need to go brush your teeth and get that sparkly, fresh, clean feeling. And so the acid was the reward. That clean feeling that you felt after that. So the cue was rub your tongue over your teeth. If they feel like they need to be brushed, the routine is you go brush them, and the reward is you get that minty sort of tingly feeling afterward. It was very powerful. And now, it's pretty much unheard of that people don't brush their teeth. It was a very successful advertising campaign, and it used this simple formula back in the day. So chances are you've developed some bad habits over time. Well, the bad news is that you cannot really extinguish bad habits. But the good news is that you can change that cycle. So there's still going to be a cue, but you can have a different routine and a different reward. And he discusses how Alcoholics Anonymous have used this. So there's usually a cycle, there's stress or something like that in someone's life that triggers them to drink. And then that's the routine, is that they drink, and then their reward is that they get stressed free and they sort of, chill out and mellow out and all of that stuff. So what AA has done over the years and been very successful at is replacing the routine and the reward with something else. And in the book, they mentioned that a belief in God is a really big deal, a part of that success. And the real magic that he explains is that it's the belief in something bigger than that person that is helping them. And when they get that little bit of hope, and then they have some success because of it, that's their reward. And then over time, this snowballs. And again, you've got someone who is maybe still having those same cues like stress or whatever it is in their life, but they've actually got a different routine and a different reward, and they've become addicted to that instead. Another thing he talks about is how important group psychology is. So, hey, if it worked for that guy, it could work for me too. And how powerful this community, or a community creates belief. And we see that all the time in advertising, testimonials, even on our own websites. If someone writes us a great Google review or something like that, no one wants to be first. But if you go and you say, hey, I identify with this guy's person, I bet that could work for me. And another part of that is that if you are part of a group, and in AA, again, you're committing to your success in front of people. So that really helps to build these habits and reinforce them, that accountability aspect of it too. So these are things, as I'm talking about AA and these other examples, think of how you can start applying this to what you are doing, the habits that you want to change. Maybe become part of a group and hold each other accountable. Maybe, look at what other people are doing and the testimonials, the things they have talked about. And if it's that belief that you need, whatever it is that allows you to take that step, that leap of faith to make these changes, start looking at ways to do that. The next thing he talks about is a biggie, something he calls a keystone habit. Now, this is more than just a habit that affects itself. This is the keystone, right? It's the domino that's going to affect the others. And he had a really good example. He talked about families that eat together. The studies show that families who habitually eat dinner together seem to raise children with better homework skills, higher grades, greater motivational skills, and more confidence. And that these small wins that you have really equate to bigger wins over time. These keystone habits encourage change by creating structures that help other habits flourish. So, again, eating dinner with the family, that encourages communication, and that encourages rapport with your parents and openness, and trust. And all of those things lead to what they talk about, the higher grades and all of the good behaviors that kids have just by that one habit. So think of the power in that, right? There's one thing you can do. Start looking around for that, whether it's in your practice or in your personal life. What is that one thing that you can change that is going to have this effect, this ripple through effect on other things? That's where a lot of power lies. Now, the greatest of all of the keystone habits, according to Duhigg, is willpower. And he equates this to using a muscle. If there's that candy sitting there and we just know we can eat it whenever, or we've got a charge card and we know that whatever we want at any given time we could really have, we are not really utilizing the power of saying no, our willpower. We're not doing without. And so that muscle becomes weak and flaccid, and it becomes harder to actually say no to things. And this is why sports for kids is such a big deal, or taking piano lessons, because it's not that they're going to go learn that skill. That can be a great thing if they really have some talent, but it's that you are teaching them the discipline, right? The ability to say no to other things, to say yes to these things, and to force yourself at a certain time to be at a certain place doing a certain activity, even if it's not something that you love. So an example that he talks about is an experiment that was conducted where 29 people were signed up for 4 months of a money management program, and they were to deny themselves any luxuries, and they were asked to keep detailed logs of everything that they bought. Now, these people's finances improved as they went through the program, but there were also side effects, and these were positive side effects. If they were smokers, they started smoking fewer cigarettes. They drank less booze. They drank less coffee. They ate less junk food, and they were generally more productive at work. So what happened is, as they strengthened that willpower muscle in the one part of their lives, it had this spillover, that domino effect, into other aspects of their lives. They just became better at everything. They had more willpower to say no to certain things and to say yes to the right things. So the author concludes by saying this, that once you understand that you can change habits, that they are not set in stone, you have the freedom and the responsibility to change them. And the real power of the habit is that you can choose it to be anything you want it to be. And once that choice occurs and becomes automatic, it becomes real. And then it starts to become inevitable. The philosopher Aristotle said, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence is not an act, but a habit." And he was absolutely right thousands of years ago. And now Duhigg is pointing to the science behind that truth. So go out and change your habits today. Look at the science of it. Check out the book. I think it's a great read, or do the audible.com like I love to do and just listen to the book if you don't have time to actually sit down and read one. But start enacting these changes and look at how real this science is, and then help your patients do the same. I hope this was useful to you, and we'll catch you next time. Psst. Hey, this is Dr. Day. I hope you are enjoying the show. If you are, please do us a favor and jump on over to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Chiro Business Mojo podcast at www.chirobusinessmojo.com.